Thank you everybody for coming. Nick Knutson, Executive Director at DemCast. We're, for those of you who aren't as familiar with us, we are a 501c4 nonprofit organization dedicated to digital messaging, lifting up grassroots voices in digital spaces, and using our collective reach and power to help build our pro-democracy movement. And could not be more thankful for everybody, for the hard work that everybody's been putting in the DemCast team and DemCast network over the last weeks, months, years. But it's been a real push here, in particular over the last month. People have been working really hard to combat disinformation, to spread pro-democracy messaging. Cannot thank you enough for what you've been doing. 24 more hours, and we'll be able to sit back and watch all the good news stream in. Fingers crossed. So today is a really important conversation that we're actually sort of leapfrogging over what the heck is going to happen tomorrow, and going straight to the stuff that we know is going to happen after the election, at least to some degree, which is the GOP is and their MAGA allies, especially online allies, are going to be spreading lots of election disinformation and trying to overturn results, and all the things that the MAGA movement is about, which is anything that is anti-free and fair election. So Jamie, do you want to hop in and introduce our guests, and then we can get going and have a discussion?
Yeah, I am actually really excited about this. We've worked with Common Cause quite a bit, and so I'd love to introduce Jesse Littlefield. He is the vice, or Littlewood, so sorry about that. My nerves already. And he is the vice president for campaigns for Common Cause. All of the voter protection numbers you're seeing floating everywhere, Common Cause is behind this. And so they are one of the biggest champions of democracy that is out there, and they do fabulous work. If you guys have questions for Jesse as we go through, please put them in the Q&A. Chat moves too fast, and we will get to them as fast as we can. And Jesse, we will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Can folks hear me okay? Great. I'm in a Washington, D.C. hotel. I'm normally based in Boston, Massachusetts, but I'm here in D.C. to be part of the Election Protection Command Center today, the last day of early vote in many states, and tomorrow, all throughout Election Day. It is an absolute pleasure to be speaking with you tonight, because it is activists like the DemCast network that are raising the voices of not only the grassroots, but also trusted sources of information, the grassroots voter protection organizations that work to nonpartisan efforts to support voters to be able to have their voice be heard in our election, to raise up trusted sources of information like elections officials and mainstream media, and really change the volume and the share of voice that social media is feeding to voters all across this country in advance of this election, during Election Day, and after Election Day. It is absolutely true that right now we are facing a pitched battle against disinformation, the mostly right-wing election disinformation that is being used for political, personal, and financial gain to cause folks to either miss their opportunity to have their voice be heard by disenfranchising them with incorrect information, or otherwise just undermining their faith in the integrity of the election because it serves their political gain. The best way that we have found to combat that is by doing the reverse Steve Bannon. We flood the zone with accurate, positive, pro-voter information and make it difficult for that scraggly weed we call election disinformation to find a crack in the pavement to root itself. If we have a strong, resilient network of voters and voter protection allies, we think that we can prevent election disinformation from taking root. Now, we're not going to be perfect, but we're going to be able to get a lot of people who would otherwise be sucked down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories and believing that our elections or some parts of our elections are insecure, if we have a strong voice. So that's what the work that I have already seen make a huge impact from the DemCast network. You are truly doing the work on the side of the angels and ensuring that people are hearing the accurate and positive information. It makes a huge impact. I have a short presentation of what to expect over the next couple of days that I think will help as we get into it. But I just want to again say my deep appreciation for the blood, sweat, and tears that I know has been poured out already to this point. And I also want to say, don't burn all your matches. A lot of the election disinformation that's going to come up is going to happen on November 9th and the 10th and the 11th and all throughout the rest of the period, because it builds the case for voter suppression and election sabotage efforts in the states. And so state legislative cycles will be won or lost, and voter suppression bills will be won or lost in the weeks following the election based on how dominant the election disinformation narratives are. So this work is more than just this election. It is going to continue on and pay dividends for democracy if we keep our spirits high, we keep our voices strong, and we stay together and go the distance. Here's what we've been thinking about and looking at over the course of this election. Our work at the Stopping Cyber Suppression Project with Common Cause, where we are super proud to have DemCast as a partner again, not just in 2020, but here in 2022, does not only the inoculation work of getting the word out to voters, but we also monitor election disinformation with a set of volunteers. And maybe a number of folks on this call have been part of that. That's important because we want to tune the right kind of content we're telling voters based off of what are the most significant threats that they're facing. So what we've seen here in my Venn diagram of doom, my anticipated disinformation scenarios here, well, before and during the election, we're seeing, and I'm sure you have as well, lots of disinformation about the procedures and what it actually takes to vote. So there's an intentional attack on vote by mail, on the drop box method or community collection of ballots, which is legal in many states. We also anticipate seeing on election day false reports of police or ICE or other officials at polling locations in an attempt to scare people away from actually voting in person. And we'll continue to see intimidation and surveillance of voters, not just like the Dropbox watchers in Arizona, but other types of surveillance of cameras or videotaping or trying to build a case to remove voters from the voting rolls and challenge their eligibility or otherwise intimidate them from participating. Now, the good news is there are election protection poll monitors, nonpartisan poll monitors, and volunteers who will help voters know that they have the right to vote and help them through any challenge that they have. And there's other resources as well. But we know that there will be challenges all throughout tomorrow. And I'll talk about some more specific ones. And then post-election, as I mentioned, is one of the most critical periods where we often see a spike in disinformation. We'll see false claims by candidates during the counts or recounts of the election. We will see candidates falsely claim victory, or if they win, will sometimes also try and have their cake and eat it too by saying they won despite the fraud, which no, it doesn't really make any sense to me either, but it's how they can rhetorically get around a whole nest of lies they've built around widespread voter fraud. We'll also see soon after the election, excessive requests for voting records, a tactic to weaponize the Freedom of Information Act and transparency laws to make life a living hell for elections officials by requesting reams of documents from them. And potentially citizen canvasses, as we saw after the 2020 election, where citizens deputize themselves as to go around and ensure that voters actually exist. So knocking on doors and intimidating voters through their presence. Now, through the center of this is the intimidation, doxing, and otherwise harassment of elections officials who continue to do heroic work for our democracy. And I want to say one thing about elections officials. It has always been the case in our elections that the folks who administer the elections have come from different political parties. We've had Democrats and Republicans and independents and others administering our elections since there were elections. Now, we are concerned that the intimidation and the harassment of elections officials may be creating some folks who took that job, especially the permanent positions, as an interest in civic engagement and building a civic culture in their community, and they may be replaced with more partisan actors in the future. And many folks have been, I'm sure, reading about this challenge that elections officials have been having. But when folks go and vote tomorrow, there are going to be Democrats behind the desk and Republicans behind the desk, and some of them, may believe that the 2020 election was rigged. But there is no scenario that we are anticipating where any given elections official or poll worker will have the ability of changing the outcome in any given polling place. There are checks and balances and systems in place where multiple people administer the elections. So to be clear, while we're worried about this intimidation of elections officials, we don't think that that is going to create the case where there will be such a significant amount of interference by any given poll worker. If there is, you will no doubt know about it, and we will make sure that there's actual proof behind that, unlike the proofless claims of widespread voter fraud, which we know are a political fantasy that is useful for the right. Okay, so moving forward, what have we seen so far, and what are we going to continue to see? The first thing I would say is 2020 election disinformation never really left, and we are here, unfortunately, dealing with the repercussions of that. So Sharpiegate is back. The theory that certain pens are more, you have to use certain pens or disobey the poll worker instructions and bring your own specific ballpoint pen and not use the felt tip pen that they offer you. That continues to play a role in creating this sense of uncertainty or worry that the election is going to attempt it to be stolen from folks. We are seeing continuing vote by mail attacks like we did in 2020 as well. One thing that is, and then we saw this increase in Dropbox watching and folks who think that is, that there's some shadowy cabal of ballot collecting nefarious agents when there is, which has been really, which is not true, and there's no evidence for it, but has really been created by this propaganda film called 2000 Mules, and has led to the intimidation of a number of voters. So these things, while there is no proof that there is any actual evidence that this is happening, it still creates this narrative of fear and worry and uncertainty going into the election. And that creates a bigger problem. Part of this is it leads to these right-wing sources to push individuals, because they've demonized all the voter access processes that are out there to let voters vote the way that is most helpful to them. They're now pushing folks to vote in person on election day. So the push is to come in on election day, and sometimes it is even to come in as late as possible to be able to vote. Now, to be clear, everyone should vote in the way that works best for them. If it works best for you to come right before polls close on election day, you should do that. But that's dangerous, because if you have an emergency or something comes up, you may miss your chance to actually have your vote cast and counted. The other thing that this does is this will, if followers of this theory or this advice take it seriously, it'll create additional long lines and delays at the hardest time of the night for elections officials, which is right before they're trying to close up shop. As folks know, if you're in line by the time a polling place closes, you should stay in line because you should be allowed the opportunity to vote. But that line could extend, and some of the additional instructions that are being directed at voters who believe this content is to disobey what poll workers are advising you to have a smooth voting experience and to do things differently. And that is, in their own words, to overwhelm the system. So this is a somewhat intentional plan to cause problems and chaos at the polling places. We know that we can get through this by remaining calm and turning down the temperature of any given situation and letting election workers do their job. But this is the plan that is actually happening. It also creates more opportunities for disinformation to spring up if there is a problem at the polling place. So one way of thinking about it is you've got folks who have been believing that there's ballot mules around every corner and the Postal Service is somehow in on the steal, and everywhere they turn, there's some effort to rig the election. Well, if they go in to vote on election day and there is some administrative issue, the e-poll book goes down for 5 minutes. If there is some other just naturally occurring tech problem or a slightly longer line, they're going to view that in a partisan conspiracy theory lens and turn those into viral moments for disinformation to fuel a national disinformation narrative. We've seen this every election. And it doesn't really matter if the election is even a partisan contest. It could be a primary. It doesn't matter if it's a national. It doesn't matter if it's state. Any election can become part of this national disinformation narrative. So back in March of 2022 in Harris County, Texas, not enough GOP election judges showed up in all of the precincts where voters could cast their ballot. And because of the rules in Texas, and again, as we know, rules for how you vote vary state by state and sometimes county by county. In some cases, the Republican judges weren't there and Republican voters weren't able to cast their ballot because they needed to be administered by a Republican election judge. And in some precincts, a Democratic judge wasn't available, election judge wasn't available, and Democrats couldn't cast their votes. And so we had competing viral claims of intentional suppression for what was actually an administrative challenge. And that's what happens when people are primed to view this stuff through this kind of conspiratorial partisan lens, and that eats away at our the faith in the integrity of the election and the belief that these elections are being administered accurately. Last couple of points here. We also know that there's a lot of opportunity to help voters, and there are multiple different ways to help them. But this is also a bit of a challenge. We really recommend, coming from the election protection network, that folks really highlight, if you're going to just tell people one thing to do on election day, in addition to going to vote, is to program 866-R-VOTE into your phone and have it at the ready, because that's the one number people need, and you can get to all kinds of resources and all kinds of language assistance, and you'll talk to a trained volunteer at a law firm who can help you through the process. But there's all these competing pieces of advice that are out there, and that kind of creates the opportunity for bad actors to come in and produce their own tip lines and advice that is actually part of a voter suppression network, and creates voter suppression infrastructure so that people can, these folks can claim that they have additional information around voter suppression. So from different candidates or the True the Vote website, the advice instead is to really hone in on one key message. And that has been really helpful, that from DemCast, to help us push our inoculation content and to ensure that we're using shared language and shared values. And again, if there's one thing that you want people to take away aside from knowing to go vote, it's to use the 866-R-VOTE hotline. And what that hotline does is it connects you to the hotline room at Election Protection Command Center. And I want to read this group in because this isn't just any old group of voters. These are highly engaged democracy advocates. And I want to tell you a little bit more about that infrastructure because it is the key to how we are actually going to stop suppression. Not just one hotline, a hotline that's in English and it's in Spanish and it's in Arabic and it's in Asian and Pacific Islander languages. It also connects to a network of state-based organizations. Our elections are administered on the state and county level, and the rules change, and sometimes they're changing very frequently through lawsuits or through administrative changes on the state level. Election protection is really state-based, and each of these state tables have a plan, and they have a trusted name in their communities. They have relationships with elections officials. They have eyes and ears on the ground of field volunteers. So we have over 15,000 volunteers who have signed up to be nonpartisan election protection poll monitors. We have relationships with local media so we can get out urgent PSAs and action alerts. If a polling place is extended, for example, we can work with local media to let people know that there's an additional time to vote at their polling place. And we have coverage everywhere. We don't have we're not deep in every single state, but we have coverage all across the country. So I want folks on this call to know that going in tomorrow on this election day, we have people to help voters. It's really important that voters know, because they have to wade through disinformation and potential intimidation, that there are those who are out there to help them, both a single phone call away, but they might even meet an election protection or an election defender volunteer outside of their polling place who is there to make sure that everyone is able to vote. So we'll see people in all of these states, and we'll also get information from the folks on the ground to let us know if something is happening. And if we hear a disinformation narrative about police or ICE at a polling place, we can verify if it's actually happening or not. So that's the kind of power that we have all together. All right, I'm wrapping up here, and I'll happily take questions and comments from folks here too. I know that Jamie shared a whole lot of great resources, and that I've seen some amazing posts that are coming out of the DemCast network. But I just want to let you know that we have a great database of nonpartisan voter inoculation and anti-disinformation content at commoncause.org/election-truths. I'll put that in the chat in a second. We are trying to use the #OurElections hashtag so that we can do some of that tracking. I want folks to know there's multiple languages of this content that's there. It's not as slick as the DemCast election protection social media toolkit. So that's another great place to go. Certainly that's a really helpful place. But if you needed to find additional content or imagery or sample text, sample content or different issues, that's a great place to look. And then last, if and when you run across election disinformation, I think I'll be reminding folks, not telling them the first time, but reminding them that the first rule of online disinformation is don't amplify it. Don't retweet it. Don't like it. Don't try and fact check it. It just gives the algorithm more information that says this is a compelling piece of content and we should show it to more people. The best thing to do is to report it either directly through the platform or at reportdisinfo.org. My team is looking at every single thing that comes in through reportdisinfo.org, and we are getting really important tips of disinformation narratives that are starting to spread, and we take action on them on the state and national level. And we're often able to remove the worst disinformation by lobbying the social media companies to get them taken down. So that's that call to action. If you feel that energy that you need to do something about online disinformation you found, reportdisinfo.org is a great outlet for that. So let me stop there and pause. And again, thank this impressive and powerful group of individuals. And this network is going to be part of what takes us through to make sure we have a really good election.
We do have some question. Someone told me that even though we're flooding the zone with truth, this disinformation still fills 70% of the digital space. Do you know if that's accurate?
So what I have seen from some of our partners who have some of the best data analytics capacities to look at the whole stream of content as best they can. And to be clear, only the social media platforms know for sure, because they're not open sourcing their algorithms and they're not telling people, unfettered access to the data, and researchers are constantly running up against roadblocks and challenges at these social media platforms. But from what they can tell from using the analytic tools at their disposal, yes and no. On an average day, the share of voice, which is the term of art some folks in the social media space use when you think about of the content or of the conversations that's happening, the share of voice about voting will be weighted towards conspiracy theories around voter fraud or voter disinformation. So voter fraud and anti-voter messages about voter ID, or this new really pervasive narrative about we should only know the results on election night. Anything less than that is fraud, which has never been true. Election night has never been results night in this country. So that kind of content will be a larger share of voice than pro-voter content celebrating the civic joy of voting, or the fact that your voice, how you make your voice heard in a democracy is your vote. The caveat is that's on your sort of every-ish day, when the overall share of voice, the amount of content is relatively low. When it comes to big days like election day, we actually break through, and the pro-voter voices have both an opportunity, and we've proven time and time again that we can break through and have the dominant share of voice if we all work together and communicate at the same time. And so we've seen that happen in other elections, and we've seen that at key points across the timeline. And so today and tomorrow is no exception. We can actually have the dominant share of the conversation on social media if we put our minds to it.
And remember, people are more likely to trust their friends that are sharing it, people that they know, versus a stranger. And so even if your post maybe doesn't get the reach, you're still inoculating your circle of friends.
This is outstanding information, Jesse. I think we're all very motivated to get all these links out there, to make sure that people know the number to call, how to report stuff, and we'll of course use our toolkit to do that. But we'll also just push it out and get these links out to everybody via email, as Jamie said in the chat. Jamie, were there other? I'm on my phone. Are there other questions in the Q&A?
Yeah, I think a good question is, if any of the election deniers are elected as state secretaries of state, can they be sued to bar them from office on the grounds that they can't be trusted to do their jobs?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I'll put up my not a lawyer hand at first. So here's what I would say, more generally speaking. We know it is likely, though not guaranteed, that we will have election deniers holding office, in a larger share. Let's be clear. There's already 143 members of Congress who voted to overturn the election. So we know we already live in a world where we have election deniers holding office, but we will probably exist in a world where there are election deniers who will have statewide authority over elections, often not at their complete discretion, but will have some authority over how elections are both administered and certified in their states. That is probably going to be the case. We're not sure, but it might be the case. What I would say, and what I'll say if you ask me and that happens, is we the people still get to decide. Just because there is going to be some election administrator who believes conspiracy theories doesn't mean that we cannot empower the voters and the folks who live in that state to make sure that they do the right thing. how many times have we seen a recalcitrant elected official or corporation do the right thing, not because they wanted to, but because we made them do it? So organizing and getting engaged in local grassroots groups that have a voter protection and an anti-suppression or an anti-sabotage lens is going to be critical. And the reality of that, and where we saw it play huge dividends in Arizona and in Pennsylvania, where there were attempts at election sabotage already, is there needs to be savvy organizing that doesn't split us straight on partisan lines. We do need to peel off Republican elected officials who are willing to stand up to the MAGA faction of their party who want to do election sabotage or election subversion activities. And to do that takes smart organizing. It takes organizing that builds community connections in civic stakeholders like the business community and the faith community and other folks across the state to show that it isn't a partisan issue that elections should be administered fairly. It's a democracy issue. And so that's going to be the key between in the next year, if in fact we do see this new emerging threat of election sabotage through those who are legally empowered to do election administration.
So are there any other questions? And we will share, Jesse, are you able to send out the link for the slides and then we can get that shared with everybody?
Yeah, I can do some of that.
Yeah. And so we will get all the links because I know we're sharing a lot of links. And so we will make sure we send that out in an email because, you know, chat goes by so fast. And otherwise you have 50 tabs open up trying to, is there a Facebook question? I'm sorry, I saw it running down. Any thoughts on Musk's attempt to sway voters today?
Say that one more time.
On Elon Musk's attempts to sway voters today.
Yes, very, very curious behavior. I actually have no official statement on that, but I think it is curious that we are now living in a time where we have seen the owner of a major social network and social media platform specifically instruct or tell people what he believes they should vote on a partisan basis. That's unprecedented as far as I'm aware. But it is almost the thing that I would say is it is a continuing three-ring circus sideshow. And the reality is when it comes to social media elections, the key thing is to get the right information out, the trusted and true information. And if we do our jobs in communicating that and getting voters their nonpartisan assistance, that's the key thing that we want to focus on. I think you want to ignore the sideshow and focus on what's in our control, which is the fact that we should tell the voters in our world, that are reachable by us, our friends and family, and the folks we have connected on social media. Here, you should vote in the way that works best for you, and here's the assistance you may need. If you need it, you should use it.
Yeah, I mean, I can say that I've reported about 20 tweets in the last few days with disinformation. The majority of those tweets were taken down, and the couple that weren't were still labeled as learn more about election. So that is still going on regardless of what Musk is doing. So that is some good news. So.
And very, very savvy response there, Jesse. I'll give a little bit more blunt answer in that Musk is a troll. He's like the troll. Other than Trump, he's like the troll, and he's trying to goad us into talking about him what he says, and move away from talking about pro-democracy stuff and where people can vote and how they can vote and that they should vote. So yeah, just leave it alone. Just let, it's going to get amplified, and we can't do anything about that. But we can ignore him and not give him any more oxygen than he deserves. And we will have a whole conversation as a DemCast community after we get through the election and the election protection work that has to happen after the election, about Twitter as a platform and what's happening, and how we might need to change behavior and all that kind of stuff. But that's a conversation for another day. Right now it's just head down, GOTV, and help voters vote.
Well, I think we've got all the questions answered. So I'm sure you've got a busy day tomorrow and you're ready to get some shut-eye before it. So thank you so much for joining us, Jesse.
Thank you, and thanks for all the work you're doing to promote the nonpartisan voter education, inoculation, and voter support resources. It's really powerful work, and I want to thank you again for all of that.
Yeah, and we will be keeping this updated in real time over the next few days. So I think the next few days are going to be even more important for this work than it has been leading up.
Yeah, 100%. Jesse, you and your team, you guys are democracy heroes in all of our books. We appreciate what you do so much, and we will do our best to get word out into our networks, and hopefully help some voters over the next few days.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So that ends the nonpartisan portion of our call. We got an election tomorrow, folks, and we wanted to make sure that we shared some resources, some thoughts, some good vibes with y'all before we sign off. Jamie, I know you were going to share we had some links that we wanted to share. Do we want to drop those? And like she said before, we'll get them out via email too, but we can share them in chat as well.
Well, and I wanted to, despite the mainstream media doomsday, just share some early voting numbers. There's around 43 million people that have voted so far. But the big takeaway from the early voting numbers were in 2018, we led the early vote by 1.6%. In 2020, we led by 7.4%. This year, we are leading by 10.8%. That is a huge margin that the Republicans have to make up tomorrow. And that is in these toss-up congressional districts, the Senate races, the governor's races. So we have a lot of reason to be optimistic tomorrow and defy all odds. We just have to keep going. And so there are some great ways to keep going tomorrow. One is the super majority is doing a massive text bank to women are voting. I believe there are 2 shifts tomorrow. We have been partners with Supermajority, and the coalition together has made over 26 million voter contacts. So that is incredible. These will be just women to make sure they vote. And that's a crucial voting block. And then, of course, we have got our 3 priority races. If you want to phone bank into Nevada, North Carolina, New Hampshire, there's a link that has all of those, and these are all remote opportunities. And then we've also been working with Blue Rose Research, and this is the latest message testing on issues and Senate candidates. customize it. On the Senate candidates, I've included Into Action's State Resource Library with all of their gifts. Thank you, Kylie. And Kylie, if you want to drop, they have gotten all of these GOTV gifts out today, these blue vote blue gifts. You want to drop those into the link. I will make sure we send those out too. And then we've got
just drop a thank you to Kylie and Into Action. We have such a symbiotic relationship with you guys and the amazing art that you create and get out, and we can get out through our network. So thanks so much.
And then somebody asked about ballot curing in Pennsylvania. They have to fix it by 8 p.m. tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night. So that is the link if you want to help cure ballots in Pennsylvania. I believe it's 3,500. It was the last number I saw of ballots that need to be fixed right now. So, and then we've got 3 great social media toolkits. I know Nick has been working on the New Hampshire, North Carolina, Nevada one. So here is this link. Yep, North Carolina. This is specifically for North Carolina, Nevada, New Hampshire. And then we've got the main mobilized to midterm, which has tons of content on governor, secretary of state, House, Senate.
So
Attorney
much
generals.
content.
So much content.
If you guys are twiddling your thumbs tomorrow and you're like, what can I do? Like, holy cow, just dive in. There's a lot of content in there.
Yeah, you vote in person tomorrow, you're waiting in line.
Right.
Great thing to do.
Yeah.
Just go on. And so we will get all of these links shared out, but we have a big opportunity tomorrow to make history. And I know one poll that came out last week that they actually asked the right question is they asked people what the most important issues were, of course, economy, inflation. But then they asked, what's the most important issue to make you go vote? Abortion was number 1. Abortion was higher than economy, higher than inflation, and the early vote is being powered by suburban women. So,
yep, I think we've got there are some serious wild cards that are involved in the election this week and tomorrow. The women coming out in response to the Dobbs decision is obviously a big one. Youth vote, which our friends over at Voters of Tomorrow have been talking up like crazy. The projections for youth vote breaking all-time records.
Well, what's
when it's all
interesting,
said and done,
when you look at the youth vote, the reason the youth vote is down is because young Republicans aren't voting. 63% of the youth vote are Democrat and 14% are unaffiliated. Only 22% of the youth vote is Republican. So that is why the youth
all right, there we go. Obviously, those are going to be slanted in a way, but the other thing about these polls is, since when has it been a good idea to pay any attention to polls? Like, how many times do we have to bang our heads against this brick wall? Like,
Well,
th-
even,
they've been wrong for years,
Yeah.
in different ways. Sometimes they've been wrong, you know, in terms of Republican, you know, being not Republican enough. Sometimes they've been the other way. Screw the polls. The poll is tomorrow. The poll has been happening in the early vote. The poll and then the big poll is tomorrow. And the question is how big a advantage will Republicans have especially in key races in in-person voting tomorrow? Will their enthusiasm on day of make up the ground that they've lost in the early vote? That's the question. We don't know. There's no way to know,
we don't know.
until the election happens. But
but
there's lots
being
of
down
reasons to be optimistic.
11 points is a huge gap to make up. And even in the senior vote, 65 and up, Dems are outperforming in the senior vote, which has never happened before. I think the Social Security thing is getting to seniors. And you also have the fact that a lot of seniors who died from COVID were Republican. So
Right. So you know, keep your heads up, everybody. Let's focus on getting final messaging out via our social accounts about how to vote, where to vote, who to vote for, pro-democracy candidates, Democrats across the board. You know, let's not wake send a text to our Oregon folks earlier today. Let's not wake up with a MAGA governor and extreme regret that we didn't do enough. let's make use of the last 24 hours. Encourage people to do text banking and phone banking right up until the last minute. Get these election protection links out there as much as we can. Amplify each other in digital spaces, and bring it home. And we'll be able to look back and say, okay, we did it. We did everything we could do. This team has been working so freaking hard. It's incredibly impressive. It's noticed by campaigns across the country how big a digital impact we have, and that has a huge impact on mobilization and persuasion. People are exceptionally thankful. We're going to hear more specific comments about that after the election, I am sure. But thank you so much for what you have been doing. Thank you so much for what you will do over the next 24 hours to bring it home. I hope that everybody can have a drink of choice, of your choice, or a snack of your choice in celebration tomorrow night, just for the hard work, you know, regardless of what the outcome is going to be. I'm optimistic.
and we probably won't know tomorrow night. We really won't.
We will not know tomorrow night.
So
we'll know some stuff tomorrow night. We'll know,
yeah,
like,
we'll know some, but
we'll know there will be a few Senate seats that might get called. That there will be some House races that'll get called, some governor races. But the stuff that's really tight, it's going to take a while, especially in states that have a lot of mail-in voting. So and that's part of the election protection messaging that we have to put out there is to help people understand that fact, and to not expect to know, you know, what the balance of Congress is going to be, you know, by midnight tomorrow night, because that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and there was a question of why haven't Democrats been pumping out polls to counter. I can't speak for all campaigns, certainly ones that I have been working with closely. It's very simple. They don't want people complacent. I've seen internal polls that look great, but they don't want Democrats going, oh, well, this poll is showing we're up by 5. I don't need to go vote. And so just like we saw in California, you know, with the governor's recall race, when people think it's close, you're more likely to vote thinking my vote will count. If you don't think it's close, it's like, well, why should I bother?
Mhm.
Right. And at this point, it's irrelevant, right? It's we have the window that we have now, and that's to leverage our personal networks and get engaged in volunteerism to try and turn people out. So do we have a special hashtag? One of the ones that we're using is in the election protection toolkit that we were talking about before. That's our elections, right? Isn't that right, Jamie?
Yes, and
Yeah.
then DemCast specific, we're also using Mobilize to Vote. So both of them are actually in there. So
I know today Vote Blue Tomorrow was trending. So I think tomorrow it's Vote Blue Today. So
yeah, last time I saw it, that was trending #1. That was just a couple of hours ago.
Yeah, and thank you guys so much for jumping in on that. Obviously the DemCast network is a big part. Every time we collectively make something trend.
That's #2 right now. So
it's very appreciated by people within the party apparatus that you guys consistently jump in on those hashtag campaigns. Trending a hashtag isn't like the end all be all, but it does really help direct people to content that's motivating and that's helpful for our cause. So really appreciate that. We will let you know in the morning. Lori mentioned the possibility of Vote Blue Today. Don't start using that right at the turn of midnight. We'll get some guidance from our partners across the movement about what the final hashtag strategies are going to be for tomorrow, and we'll let everybody know as soon as we can.
sounds good. And then it's Pamela's birthday today, and she's using her birthday to be on this call. So thank you.
Thank you.
Pamela, and happy
birthday. That's awesome. That is a democracy warrior right there.
That's
Thank
right.
you very much. Well, let's give Pamela a election win tomorrow. How about that?
All right, just for you.
All right. All right.
well, onwards to victory tomorrow night.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
I'm excited. We actually have an in-person election watch party again this year. Makes it a lot easier to bear around friends. So
Yeah, like I said, take a moment tomorrow to just celebrate the work. We won't know the outcomes. We all have immense nerves about the results of this election, but take a moment to celebrate the work because you guys have worked really hard. So
Absolutely. Thank you all so much.
okay, all right, let's shut her down.
Vote Blue tomorrow.
See you out there tomorrow. Keep doing what you do. Thanks,
right.
everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Love y'all.